Good morning. Sorry, everyone. As always, I just want to check that this is all working well. I believe it is. There we go. Hello, everyone. For those that are here, for those that don't know who I am, my name's James. I'm the founder of Rupert, your 24/7 social media assistant. And it's very simple. We're on a mission to help brands extract more value from their comments section. Too many brands are receiving a vast amount of comments and leaving them unanswered. And it's doing one of two things. It's affecting their brand. Actually, more importantly, they're missing out on sales opportunities. And that is the mission we're on here at Rupert. Every week, I give a quick 10 to 50 minutes, give or take, presentation on how you can extract more value from your comment section. But more importantly, there's 3 things that you can take away today and implement for free. And if you do that, you will see some shoots of green when it comes to the comment section. Today, we're going to be discussing how you can boost your brand's reputation through comments and why every comment response shapes how your brand is perceived. Every week we start with a statistic or a stat, and this one is 40% more spent with businesses that chat and respond to customers on social media. Again, we as brands, we know that the more you interact with your customers, the more they're gonna spend with you. And actually, up to 40% is a huge amount. And actually, depending on what your average order value is, that might not move the needle a little bit or much on that one order, but actually, depending on how many orders you're doing every week, quarter, or even potentially yearly, that can move the needle a lot for your brand, and actually can essentially give you free revenue because your cost per acquisition will stay what it is. All it is just actually you communicating with your audience more. So again, if you're not communicating, take some of the tips we'll go through in a second, but actually what you will notice is that your average order value will increase if you start engaging with your customers more, especially if you're using social for acquisition. Again, every week I give a few examples of a few brands that aren't doing such a good job at the moment with their comments and some that are, just to give you a really example of it's not just you, this is a common problem. And again, if we look at this particular brand here, I've actually pulled these this morning, all these comments, so they are relevant today. But you'll see this brand that they are using social for acquisition. Again, big thumbs up from me. I'm a big fan of using Facebook and Instagram ads for acquiring new customers. But what's really frustrating with this particular brand is that they've got loads of comments and they're not responding to any of them. And what's frustrating actually even more is that they've got a couple of customers in here who are using their products and they're advocating for them and they've just not even responded. And one was a week ago and one was 2 weeks ago. So again, really, really frustrating. And again, this is what not to do. Now, if this brand did respond, they would get a cheaper CPM from a pay perspective, but we'll go on to that in a short second. But again, this is a common problem. Again, there's an example of someone that's spending a lot of money on social at the moment to acquire customers, yet they're actually not responding to any of the comments. So why comment management matters? And of course it matters, it's huge. And I've put these into 3. So the first one is builds trust and loyalty. When you respond to comments online, it shows that you value your audience's input. And what it does do is, believe it or not, and we should know this now as brand owners, as marketeers, is that actually it creates a bit of a connection between you and that customer or that potential customer, but it builds trust and it actually builds brand loyalty. And there's some amazing brands out there that do it. We can all probably think of some today. But we need to do more of it. And again, we'll go into some tips in a second how you can do that. But again, it builds that trust. And what it also does is it encourages repeat business, repeat purchases, and actually word of mouth referrals then increases because if you're engaging with someone, people are tagging their friends in, it happens more and more than you know. The second one is manage negative feedback. So unfortunately, in the world of social media, negative comments are inevitable. But actually, how we respond determines what that outcome can be. A good example of this is we posted something on TikTok last night, and I knew that TikTok was going to get a vast amount of commentary. And weirdly enough, it did. And we've had already from last night this morning, about 440 comments. So we'll respond to all those, and Michael is doing it literally as we speak today. I'm expecting it to get well over 200 because we knew what the content was going to produce. So you're going to get it, and as brands, putting your messaging, putting your brand out there, you're going to get some good, some bad, some ugly. But actually, a timely, sometimes forced out response can potentially turn an unhappy customer, already negative customer, into potentially a brand advocate. And what it also does is, if you're going to go back to someone and not hide it and not ignore it, like a lot of brands do, or just neglect it in its entirety, what it does do for those that are sitting on the fence and are scanning the comment section because they're sitting on the fence of, do I make a purchase with this business or not? Actually, what it demonstrates is that your commitment to resolving that problem. And that goes a lot further than especially when some social media. I know me personally, obviously I'm in this world now when it comes to comments, but I do look at comments very often before I make a purchase. And actually, I think I may have mentioned it last week, but I was going to potentially purchase a pair of Oakley sunglasses from actually a TikTok shop that looked a little bit dodgy. They're really cheap, which was dodgy enough. But they turned all the comments off. So I didn't actually go ahead and purchase, because if the brands turn their comments off, my first thought is, well, if they turn the comments off, there's a reason for that. So again, I didn't go ahead and purchase. So again, they've lost me as a customer. Now, it might be that they are legitimate. I'm not overly sure on that one. But again, it gives you a really good example there of how you can turn those negative into a positive, but also just having them there can be quite a good thing. The third thing is amplifies positive engagement. So acknowledging positive customers is, again, we look at that example we just saw a second ago. We need to do more of it, because what it does do, it encourages more interaction and more engagement. And actually, that's the number one rule of social media: is we as brands, we as e-commerce firms, we need to keep people engaged on the platform. And if they do, or if we do, one of two things happens. From a pay perspective, you get cheaper CPM. So if your CPM is £10, it might reduce to 8 or 7 or 6, whatever it may be, depending on what you're optimizing for. If you're running organic social, what you will find is that you'll get which I call free reach. So if I look at my TikTok this morning, that's gone up to 15,000 views. I think it'll probably stagnate about between 20 and 22, depending on how much comments. But I'm going to, Michael and I are going to respond to every single comment on that TikTok account, which is great because it gets people then back on. And, some people are then coming back on and, fighting with us a little bit, which is great, but it builds that engagement. And that's what we want. We as brands, we as marketeers, we want to keep people engaged on the platform because it feeds into the social media algorithms, which, as we all know, we've got to play the game. But also it builds a community, and a loyal following who are actively going to promote your brand, because you're actually communicating with those really positive comments and positive customers who've had a good experience of using your product or service, which, the fact that we're leaving them unanswered is crazy. And again, here's another example of a brand that, again, this was from this morning, who are running paid social. Again, thumbs up from me, but they've got a few comments, and these are the two that sort of stood out to me. Too expensive. I don't think, again, that's just, someone just being a load of nonsense there. But again, they could have gone back to too expensive. Potentially that's someone in market and they want to try it, but it is too expensive. Potentially getting them over the line. David Sam, I'd potentially just respond back in a funny way or just hide it. Potentially it's not helping anyone, but what it is doing is, as me on social looking, and I'm seeing they've not responded to it or even dealt with it, do I trust that brand? Not overly sure. So again, just something to consider there. So strategies for effective comment management. So again, these are 3 tips you can take away today and implement literally today. The first one is personalized responses. So underrated, but we can all do it. Address the commenter by the name, but make sure the response is tailored to what they're actually asking. We understand a lot of us now have just got FAQs and we copy and paste, which I do advocate for because at least you're responding, but try as best to personalize them. But I understand that when it comes to time and resource, we don't always have the time to address every single comment in a really nice personalized way. That is one of the features of Rupert, but again, I'm fully understanding that not everyone has that time to allocate to that. But again, it makes a huge difference. The second one is get on negativity quickly. So, for example, the two examples we've just seen there, I would be jumping on that as soon as possible. Ideally within the first hour, but again, if it's out of hours, you're going to struggle because again, we don't work 24 hours a day. So I would be jumping on that as soon as possible, and I would be responding. So something like, sorry to hear you've had a bad experience, or in this case, sorry to think it's really expensive. Actually, these are all the reasons why we are at this cost, and actually, it's not too expensive. Very much like Huel have done, and I've seen some of their comments, and I've given some examples in the past of how Huel have responded to some of their commentary, which is unapologetic, and I like the way they do that. And I guess again with that particular one there, I think a potential sales opportunity, but you need to go and do that. So again, that's something you can definitely do, but get on the negativity quickly, especially when they're swearing and things like racism, because it just really affects your brand reputation. The third one is amplify positive comments. So I would turn these positive comments into an ongoing conversation. Why did they like the product or service? Why did they have a good experience with us as a brand? Again, because it's not going to be seen by just that person. It's going to be seen by a vast amount of people, especially if you're running paid. So try and get them to answer a question. What was your favorite experience? What was your favorite flavor? Can you send us a photo of your dog with our product or whatever it may be? Again, different for different markets and different businesses, but again, try and encourage that conversation. If you can then get some UGC from that, which is a cheap way to get UGC content, try it. And actually what you can then do is put all that into potentially your actual content itself. That could actually be a content organic post or even paid of really people that have had a really good experience. Maybe put it into your emails potentially, or your LinkedIn's, who knows. But again, that's a nice way of actually amplifying that positive conversation so that the user gets more engagement from you, because that's what they want, engagement, but actually we as the brands then actually get some off the back of it, which is great. So again, they're 3 tips that you can take away, you can implement today. And if you do that, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised on actually what you get from it. You'd be really surprised. Here's another example of a brand that I think have done very well. I'm not going to pronounce the name. I think it's Sugal. I think it's that. They had loads of comments. I think they had well over 70 on this particular ad. Again, thumbs up for me. They're running paid social. Every single comment was responded to. Some of them you could see it was a bit of a copy and paste job, but that's absolutely fine. But you could see that every single comment was responded to, and it looks good. Like if you were looking at using this brand, you would definitely go, yeah, there's some trust there because they've responded to every single comment. So yeah, they get a thumbs up from me from this week. You don't see many brands that respond to every single comment, whereas I think they missed a couple, but they were quite recent. So I sort of will give them a bit of due on that one. But yeah, in general, very good. It just, you can clearly see that it's obviously amplified this ad as well, which again is what we're trying to do with social is amplify either our paid or organic for typically 9 times out of 10 conversions and acquisition, which is great. So yeah, they're the pin-up boys and girls for this week, and that is my comment section again for this week. If anyone has any questions, type them in and I will answer them now. If you can't think of any and you think of any after this presentation, send them over on my DMs and I will respond promptly. I won't say immediately, but I'll respond to you very shortly. So if anyone is typing away, I'll just give you a little note on next week. So again, I run these every single Wednesday, 11 o'clock on LinkedIn without fail, 10-15 minutes, bit of content, and then like I said, you can take away. Next week is strategies to manage negative feedback on social media. I'm actually going to give you some examples of my own comments on TikTok next week, just to give you literally exactly sort of practices that we preach on this one. Keep your online image polished and positive. Yeah, I'll be honest, on this TikTok, it definitely isn't polished and positive on this particular one, which is interesting. But everyone, thank you for listening, as always. I will wait around for a minute because I know some people do type away and then I leave and then it comes through after. So I'll wait for 30 seconds. And if anyone does have any questions, type away and I will respond before I leave shortly. What I will do, rather than hang around, if anyone has got any, type them in or DM me and I will respond, like I said, promptly. But everyone, thank you all for listening, as always, and I will see you next week.